This week in PlayStation, we're talking about the PlayStation VR 2 price point. And if PlayStation Plus has lost its sauce. And of course, your God of War Ragnarok questions answered. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Greg. That's Bless. That's Janet. And of course, you can get PS I Love You XOXO on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. There you can watch us record the show live, get it ad-free, and get the weekly. Hey, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff up there. 38 episodes a month of exclusive bonus content up there for you. Blessing.
Let me tell you, we did the shit list yesterday, me and Tim.
Yeah.
That might be my favorite show that we do on this channel.
Yeah, but I'm on so many shows with you. I'm not on that one.
But none of them are as great as the shit list. I don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe you can get higher in the ranking. You know, maybe you just got to find a way to get on the top 3.
Damn.
Yeah.
Anyways, there on patreon.com/KindaFunny, you can watch us record the show live. You can get this show ad-free, and of course, you can have a great time. If you have no bucks toss our way, support us in the Epic Game Store, Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys with the creator code KindaFunny. You can get PS I Love You XOXO for free with ads, and none of the bonus content or getting your name read or any of that jazz on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames and podcast services around the globe. Thank you to our Patreon producers, so many Patreon producers for the month of October, where you came out and supported us when we launched the Spare Bedroom. People like Morgan, Lorraine, Fargo, Brady, Christopher Rodriguez, the Kinda Funny Destiny 2 PC Clan, Tall Tree 81, Joseph A. Carlson, One Up Pest Control, Carrie Palmer, Elliot, Brian Cheney, Trevor Starkey, Super Daddy Kyle, Undertopian, David Mindtell, the Mind Freak, Eric Velasquez, Scotty Wyatt, Alex Greedle, Al Tribesman, the Predator, Jason L, James Davis, aka at James Davis Makes, Mick at the Nanobiologist Abramson, Ryan T from Tennessee, Derek Gareg, and Donald Eccles. Today we're brought to you by Wondery, Rocket Money, and Chime, but we'll tell you about that later. Let's start with a PSN message from you. How you guys doing?
Greg, we're T-minus 5 days from the release of the biggest game of the year. That's right, Sonic Frontiers. We're only 5 days away. God. Get hyped, everybody.
Janet, he does this every time now. Anytime you say, hi, is he doing this? Is how he opens shows. I'm sorry you had to be a part of it.
T-minus 5 days, Janet. Sonic Frontiers.
I'm looking forard to it.
And Barrett supports it by showing the
Sonic
trailer.
Team, baby. We're almost there. We're a week away. No other game that's coming out that same week can compare to the hype of Sonic Frontiers. That's my guy Sonic the Hedgehog. Will we see Dr. Robotnik?
Who are the monsters?
Will we see a bunch of monsters that we've never seen before?
These guys are new?
Yeah, these guys are new.
Is Sonic known for his kicks? I always thought he was just spin dash.
Oh man, no! Things. Sonic's kicks are always fresh. Okay. His shoe game is off the chain.
No. I mean like physically kicking enemies. Kicks. He was kicking enemies.
He kicks people in Smash Brothers. So there's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough, I guess. Janet, are you gonna play Sonic Frontiers?
Yeah, I have to a little bit just to learn more about Blessing and what makes him tick.
Sure,
you know.
Sure.
I feel like it's worth it for that alone. If you're listening to this and want more insight into the mind of Blessing Adeoye Jr., which who doesn't? You got to at least boot this up for a couple hours. But yeah, I'm going in with an open mind and an open heart.
I want to love it.
But
the glances I've seen of it look cool. I want to try it.
In that trailer, there was a glimpse of Big the Cat holding what looked like a squid.
Okay.
And so I assume you're going fishing with Big the Cat. This is gonna be a fucking contender right here. All right? Everybody, move out the way.
Say it with a straight face.
Move out the way.
Your Shadow the Hedgehog chain on. Get out of here. We're gonna kick it over before we get into your God of War Ragnarok questions answered because the review is up and you can get it on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames in the Gamescast. Adam Wilbraham. Adam Wilbraham writes in to KindaFunny.com/PSILY, just like you can, to write in for free and says, when you think back to the PlayStation demo discs you could get on the PS1 and PS2, what demos do you remember playing over and over again because they were so good? Janet Garcia, do you have an answer to this question from Adam?
Oh my gosh. You guys can probably help me remember, but there was a game that a lot of people bought specifically because it had a demo disc with it. Was the demo Metal Gear or
Zone
Metal Gear
of the
2 or
Enders.
something?
We all bought Zone of the Enders to then get the Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty demo.
Yeah, that would be the one. The it's weird for a demo to be a game seller. I don't know. It's such a unique, like, to that era thing. But I think that would have to be it. Just, I don't know. That was the thing to do. So, like, everyone did it. Everyone got it. And everyone played the hell out of it. And I was with everyone in doing that. What about y'all? What's the first one that comes to mind that sticks in your memory?
We do a show on patreon.com/kindafunny. That's one of the 38 exclusive episodes of content you can get a month called Remember Blank. Today on Remember Blank, or I guess, it goes up alongside this show. I'm doing the one, the only Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. And with that on my mind, let alone that being the demo disc story for me, that's mine. Because it was, I know so many people think of P-Tom, the PlayStation, the official magazine, they used to come bundled with the demo disc and there'd be stuff on there, right? PlayStation Underground, there was a bunch of that kind of stuff too. Like, those were there, and I'm sure I played stuff off of them, but I don't remember them the way I remember Metal Gear and Zone of the Enders. And I forget what my problem was, but I was so anti-Zone of the Enders that I didn't want to even buy that game. So this is the first time, and I'm old. This was my first ever eBay purchase, was to get the Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty demo disc off eBay. And yeah, we'll talk about it in Remember Blank.
I bought so many like N64 games off of eBay.
Oh, nice.
Shout out to eBay.
eBay was great. God for rest its soul.
It's still around. You can still buy things on eBay.
But I mean, that is the demo disc that, I played over and over and over again. I would come home from high school, pop that on, and I would just sit. I knew everything about that tanker section or whatever. But Bless, what about you?
I had a lot of demo discs growing up, both PS1 and PS2 demo discs. I had the PlayStation Undergrounds, and I it's that thing where I had enough demo discs where I can't remember exactly which ones were in which and like what editions of PlayStation Underground and all that stuff. But the demos I remember playing the most. One, Brave Fensu Musashi for PS1. There was a demo disc with that game on it, and I absolutely loved that demo. It was one of those ones that let you jump into, like, I think there was like 3 different scenarios in the game that you can jump into. But I remember like there was one of the scenarios was the very beginning of the game where I believe you're running from like a big machine, and then like it's just a longer chase sequence, and it's teaching the mechanics of the game as you're going. And I remember it being just the coolest thing ever, because originally I was an N64 kid, and it wasn't until I got a PS2 to where I started playing those PS1 games. And I had PS1 demo discs on my PS2, and it exposed you to a different flavor of video game that I hadn't experienced because I was so entrenched in the N64 that like playing a PS1 game and seeing the different kind of graphics, right? It was more of instead of like, I guess, the round edges that you got out of the N64 games, it was like the blocky, like jagged kind of edges that you had on the PS1. And I was like, oh, this is a different world over here. This is interesting. But there was that. There was, I believe that same demo disc had NFL Blitz. And I used to play it over and over and over again. It was one of those ones where you can only play up to 1 quarter because it was the demo, and that was enough for me. I could play that over and over and over again, and I think that was probably my first football game. And so shout out to that one. There was a different demo disc that I had for PS2 that had a game called Death by Degrees, which stars Nina from Tekken. I was not a Tekken kid at that point. And so I didn't know that it was like a Tekken spinoff. I just thought it was a regular action game. And playing it, I was so enthralled. I was like, yo, this is off the chain. She had like one of those, she had a move where like she could basically go into her like analysis mode and punch certain parts of your body to break those bones in the enemy. And
then Mortal Kombat would rip it off years later.
And then years later, Mortal Kombat will steal that. But for me, in terms of graphical fidelity, that was one of the coolest things ever. And that was PS2 era. And I think at the end of the day, people didn't end up liking that game because I'd never heard anybody bring up Death by Degrees. But at the time, I thought it was really cool. Until now.
It's getting, here we go.
Okay, yeah. Barrett has up footage of Death by Degrees. I'm trying to look. Okay, this wasn't in my demo. There wasn't a moment in the demo that has like a fun sniper game. But yeah, here's what the combat looked like. And honestly,
this looks good.
Playing the demo, I thought it was really fun. Like the choreography of it,
Did you play the full
version? Pretty good. Never played the full version, no.
Yeah. Demo discs, man.
Yeah.
What a time. And I mean, like, it's like, obviously there's a million demos now, you can do blah, blah, blah. But like, what a time. That was always such a, like, oh man, you get the new magazine, you open up that plastic bag, you get that disc, what's on it, what's actually going to be in there. It was always so much fun. I want to say, was Tony Hawk or some other skating game on one of those two?
Probably.
I mean, it must have been. That's probably a stupid question.
I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 off a demo, but it was like a PC demo. It wasn't a PS2 demo.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, there you go, Adam. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on to what you probably clicked on this video for. It's time for topic of the show. It's happened. Thank you. That one was broken for the longest time,
So
and
this
that
one doesn't
one,
work
and now
now?
that one broke, and he's just like, I'm out. They can't exist at the same time. God of War Ragnarok is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it is out next week. The review embargo is up as we record this. Kind of Funny did its review today as a Kind of Funny Gamescast live on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, and of course on podcast services around the globe. You can go get it. We all gave it a 5 out of 5 on the Kinda Funny scale, calling it an amazing game, a masterpiece, putting all sorts of amazing flowers on it and saying this is the new game. And we went here, new game, here, new game. Janet, you weren't on the Gamescast review, so I want to start with you. Of course, for the FTC, the game was provided by PlayStation for review. Thank you, PlayStation, for sending it over. But Janet, what did you think of God of War Ragnarok? No spoilers.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I also would agree with that 5 out of 5. Adding on that, not only is it amazing, but also a masterpiece of a game. I think it's leaps and bounds above 2018, which is probably the biggest shock for me. In the sense that, people ask me like, how did it meet or not meet expectation? And for me, I always kind of expected that it would be, okay, they're trying to do the same thing but better, and I don't know how are they going to actually make it better, though? It already has such a good established base. I really expected more of the same. And while there's definitely a deep familiarity through line in the game, I think it was just so much more grandiose in not just what you're doing, but where you are in time of place, like story, everything. I think they also play a lot with narrative structure in this in a way that they pull off incredibly well. I think typically when games have a more ambitious narrative structure, whether it's like going to different areas, kind of taking on different sub-conflicts within the larger story, It can often feel like it's different pieces that are like related, but maybe don't connect in the best way. I always think of, like, I love Last of Us 2, but that game, everyone jokes that game has 3 endings in it because it kind of feels that way with how they've set it up and how it feels to play through. Here, I never quite knew where we were going, but I was always like on the edge of my seat. This is if there's a equivalent of a page turner for video games, this is that. I would play and feel so compelled to make it to what I felt like would be the next section, not just in like terms of, I'm done with this quest, but I'm like, I have to keep going until maybe this thing might happen, because I want to like feel the satisfaction of being like, okay, I feel a little bit of relief. There's a bit of a prize in this larger battle. So yeah, it's so fantastic. Like, I am absolutely blown away by this game. It is probably one of the best games I've ever played. Wow. There you go.
Goddamn right, Janet. Hell yeah. Blessing, your rebuttal.
I don't have a rebuttal. It's a pretty good game.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't go into, obviously, because we're going to have plenty of time to debate that on thousands of shows from here on out in the review, was really, is this better than God of War 2018? And what I made a reference to on the show was recency biased. Like, that's something I for a real definitive answer, I'd like to stop down and think about, right? But it was one of the questions. It was written in. Of course, we told you, read all the reviews. Then you can write in for our frequently asked questions about God of War segment here on PS I Love You XOXO, and we could talk about it. Alex W. wrote in and said, does this surpass God of War 2018 as Greg's favorite game of all time? And again, I don't want to go on a limb here and start talking, wild about it. Obviously, I'm super hot off of a 5 out of 5. It's a masterpiece. It's getting 10s everywhere. We're all having a great time talking about God of War today. I think it has the potential to, but I also get into this weird spot where it's in the same way as Avengers Endgame as important without Infinity War, is Last of Us Part 2 as impactful without Last of Us Part 1. Does Ragnarok hit without God of War 2018? And then does that go into what kind of game it is? My knee-jerk reaction, because I think there is a difference between what my favorite game is and what's a better game kind of thing, is that I'm with Janet, who said, unequivocally that she thinks this is a better game than 2018. I would right now say that as well, with the the asterisks of I want to be able to change my answer as I work on the platinum and continue side questing and think more about it and get a chance to digest a bit more. But Blessing, where do you come down to any of that conversation?
It's a question that I feel unequipped to answer, because I think I think it's the thing of, what do you mean by better, right? God of War Ragnarok, in terms of just pure mechanics, scope, polish, graphics, I think all those things are better than God of War 2018 to the extent that they can be better. But when comparing games like this, I think the word that comes to mind is also like greater. right? Like, which game is greater? Which game has done more for the medium? Which game brings more to the table? Is it more impressive to take the bones of God of War 2018 and build off of that to make something that feels like it exists off that? Or is it more impressive to take God of War, what it originally was, right? We're talking about the original trilogy and Ascension and all that stuff, and completely recontextualize it into this father-son story that is more intimate, more focused, that is more heartfelt, right? Like, for me, the achievement of God of War 2018 can't be understated. That said, God of War Ragnarok is a very impressive video game, and I think in a lot of ways more impressive than God of War, I'd say more impressive than God of War 2018, just in terms of the mathematics of looking at this game and going, yeah, it looks better, it runs smoother, it has higher fidelity and a higher frame rate, there's more to do, it is longer, the story has more scale, right? And I think then we get into a conversation of, do you prefer the scale of God of War Ragnarok and where it goes as a story that I'll describe as epic, or do you prefer the intimacy and focus of God of War 2018, right? I think that is kind of where the conversation goes.
And
sorry, really quick, I like how Skillup puts it in his review, where it's like he kind of sees it as one full package between both games.
Yeah, and that's the big conversation, right, of like how Ragnarok can exist without 2018. But what I would argue and push back against, maybe not argue, right, is that I would say, as ridiculous as it might sound, and I know what you're using it as, I do describe God of War Ragnarok as epic, right? We talked about battles, we talked about the scope, we talked about the cast of characters, the heights of which you can go to in this game and all that stuff. However, I would also say it's more intimate than God of War 2018. Now, I know what you mean is that intimate, when we talk about intimate with God of War 18, there you can go with the way of like, well, the emotional story and what you're doing and the relationship of Kratos and Atreus, but also where I think you're more with it, right? It felt smaller in terms of what the scope was and the scale was, and then also what the cast of characters were. Like I thought, you brought up on the review today that I had said back in the day that it felt like a stage play with the amount of people you had in 2018.
2018 almost feels like a parable that I can tell my children, right?
100%.
Like, hey, this is...
We talked about that when we were doing the re-review, right? Where I was like, this fits into mythology.
Yeah, like this is a story that about a father and son and them on their way to spread their mom's ashes on the top of the mountain, right? And the things that happen to them on the way to that. Like, that sounds like a bedtime story. That sounds like something that I can pass along to generations in the way that I guess you do with mythology. Yeah. Whereas God of War Ragnarok feels more like a... Nah, man, this is a big movie that you sit back, you watch, and you're like, whoa, like, look at all this shit that's happening. And there are the intimate moments, right? And I definitely understand the idea of, like, God of War Ragnarok. I might be there with you as well, talking about it being more intimate than 2018, because there are moments that I think hit with emotional resonance, especially when you're talking about performance and writing, that I think even go above and beyond 2018. But to say which is better, I got to sit back and like really think about it for a while.
I agree with you. I just think it's an interesting discussion because I think it is so crazy to think of Ragnarok being this bigger, crazier, all the stuff's happening, event, game, movie. But where I come down to the intimacy thing is something that I think has been interesting in both the year since 2018 and then our re-review and then just people critiquing 2018 now on the eve of Ragnarok, right? And that being the idea that like Kratos isn't great in that game either until towards the end. Then he kind of becomes a better dad. He kind of becomes a better person, yada, yada, yada. But it was just at the time so different to see him shifting and see that glacial pace. But I feel more connected to not only him, not only Atreus, I mean, Mimir, Brock, Sindri, Freya, right? Like all the people that we know from the first game here, the way they have evolved, the way they've tried to mellow out, the way they've gotten angrier, the way whatever's happening in their story is like, and then what happens to them throughout it. Like this game, I feel like every interaction, and that's a broad brush, every interaction, but give it to me. Every interaction in the main narrative, because I golden pathed it, as I talked about in the review, and it took me 26 hours, I felt like they'd propose a question and I would get the answer, or I'd get some kind of other tidbit or some other thing where it was building the intimacy of the group, of the trio, of the quartet, or the giant group of just the two of them. You know what I mean? Like every relationship was being fleshed out in some way. I didn't feel like we were wasting moments, where I don't think of 2018 as a wasteful thing. I just feel like we weren't necessarily having these intimate, impactful moments all the time with it. Sometimes it was just shooting the shit and being there.
Yeah, I think too, like a lot of 2018 runs along the surface of something that has significance, but that you don't really feel the weight of. And I feel like you have to impose a lot as the player to feel the weight of some elements of 2018. Like, I think it is natural to see that father-child relationship and think about, your own relationships or like how you'd handle like grief or how grief presents itself. And it has elements of those layers of exploration. But ultimately 2018 is very like linear in what it's doing and very like run of the mill in what it's doing, in the sense that it's like, okay, we're going and we're going to spread the ashes and you spread the ashes, right? It's like there's great stuff that happens in between and more conflict and more like relationship stuff that's dug into and an evolution between the two characters. But they both start off very like kind of cold towards one another for maybe somewhat justified reasons, but there's like a detachment in their relationship with themselves, their relationship with each other. And now in Ragnarok, there's so much more opportunity for, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, who are you and who am I and who are we as a unit, and to what degree do we need to challenge and push back and reevaluate what that means going forward? Also, what are we doing with this greater conflict besides interpersonal stuff? How should we go about it? I don't know, let's try this, let's try that. You know, different events will pop up and there's so many more layers, and I think that's what's exciting and why I feel like a deeper impact emotionally in Ragnarok. It's because there's more to explore. I think it invites more thoughts and feelings of different elements of people's lives as you see different characters have different challenges that they're facing. Obviously, it's all very vague because I don't want to spoil anything,
Obviously,
but you're getting different windows into humanity in a way that you don't in God of War 2018, where it's like, it's hard being a single dad and we're trying to like bond. Again, really touching stuff. Like, I think it's an emotional game, but I felt the impact of Ragnarok so much more because I think it invites so many different feelings to the table.
You mentioned how hard it is to talk about this game without spoiler stuff, right? That's something I said on the review too today, of like, I'm obviously excited to review it and be able to talk about it right now. I'm way more excited to be able to do spoiler talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's worth pointing out that what we're doing is recording on the 14th, a special episode of PS I Love You with the Gamescast crew, and director Eric Williams will be in the office with us to go through and do a spoiler cast there. So you need to get your questions in by the 14th. That will then post as PS I Love You on November 21st. Blessing, you had something to say?
Yeah, I want to bring up the point that Barrett brought up from like the skill up review of like, this does feel like the part 2 to the part
100%.
1. Even I'd say even more so than The Last of Us, right? With the part 1, part 2 thing.
Why is he crediting the skill up? I said that in the preview. No
I
one
never
listens
heard
to me
that.
when I
I
fucking
never
do the
heard you
preview.
say that. I
God
never
damn.
heard you say those words. But yeah, like the thing I keep saying, right, and the thing I said during the review as well is like, it feels like you're picking your controller right back up, right?
Sure.
Of course, time has passed, but in the way that, and I'm sure like, there's quite a question in here somewhere about like, you know, the idea that when we saw the original trailer, people were like, oh man, it's like DLC because the boating animations are the same or
Oh,
whatever.
man, jumping the boat.
Like, I throw that out the window, but also like, yeah, like it does feel like the same world. It does feel like you're working off a lot of the same bones, but I do think that works so much to its benefit of feeling like the same world and feeling like a homogenous sequel of, hey, this is all part of the same puzzle piece, right? But the God of War Ragnarok does make itself different by going for wider scope and bigger range. But I think with that, I think with a lot of the bigger swings that God of War Ragnarok takes, that also leaves room for more slip-ups and more disappointment, right? And that's not me saying like I'm disappointed by major story beats, but I think there are plenty of things that we can identify that I'm very excited for the spoiler cast for, which is like, oh man, I feel like this character didn't get their moment as much. Oh man, I feel like this character development was quicker because they were going through so much stuff. And there's the idea of this game being nearly twice as long as God of War 2018, right? At least like 10 hours more. There's pacing stuff there that I even think could have been done way better. And a lot of that is because they're taking bigger swings, they're going for bigger scope, they're going for epic, but does that leave for more places where we can nitpick compared to God of War 2018 that, I think keeps its scope relatively focused?
Cozy Bear writes in with a question. I want Janet to answer because you and I have talked about this on the Gamescast review. We'll talk about it here too, but I want Janet first. What are your top level thoughts on the pacing and overall length of God of War Ragnarok? One of my few qualms with 2018 was that I found it too long, with sequences like Alfheim and a lot of the late game backtracking in Midgard feeling overly drawn out. How does Ragnarok fare by comparison? Janet Garcia.
I think by comparison, overall, I think I like this pacing more. It is definitely a longer experience, to Blessing's point, but I never felt like it was overstaying its welcome. And I played like for 10 hours longer than you guys. I did 35 hours and I did a lot of the side stuff, which I did that in 2018 too. Like my 2018 clock is also like in the low 20s. So regardless of how you're playing, it is going to be a longer experience. But I think part of that is because I felt like they spent the right amount of time in so many different places. And even with the side quests, like I feel like some of my favorite content is in the side quests, and I remember playing it and being like, oh man, there were people that are not going to see this, and that kind of sucks because I'm like, this is so good. But I think it's also a testament to how well crafted the game is to have side quests that do feel on par with the mainline story, and that easily could be mainline things. But yeah, I was totally fine with the pacing. I do agree that 2018 has a bit of that. It's kind of like a roller coastery game where there's like kind of this, you're on a set path, and then there's kind of an emotional buildup, and then there's like all this wild backtracking drama stuff that pops up, and it feels like the end of that game is like 4 hours, while like by the time I was done with God of War Ragnarok, I was like, oh, I think we're at the end, and then it was done. You know what I mean? Like it felt a lot quicker, but it was going through more stuff, so I felt like I spent less time in certain things, but it all moved together at a pace that felt appropriate for the story it was trying to tell.
Yeah, that's been one thing where I didn't have a problem with the pacing with this. And I know this is eye of the beholder and what's going on. And I know we had a conversation on the Gamescast about this where it was a little bit like, well, Tim liked it, but he did so much side stuff. So that was kind of not padding it, but giving space between the major story beats, where for me, pathing it, Andy Golden pathing it, it felt like that could open yourself up to it. But for me, I like the opportunity to choose it both ways. Again, if it wasn't a review, I would have sat there and gone through and done all the side stuff as I went, rather than have a giant bevy of content now to go through and do. But I enjoyed the run through, and in times when it was like, not that it was showing its hand, but it is, you go in, you check in, you do the thing, you're off on another mission. You come back, you check in, you go off on another mission. Like, I still felt the missions, and I'm talking about the main missions, the narrative structure, were exciting and interesting enough. And to what Janet said earlier with edge of your seat stuff, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where it was going to go. I do think this game is great at subverting expectations and really making you think, oh, we're going to go this way, we're going to go that way. In the same way, one of the big themes here is like the prophecy that was revealed at the end of 2018, and kind of being like, well, we know where this is going to go then, don't we? And how do you make that interesting? Like, this game does a great job of, I think, introducing elements that kept me into it and on it and ready for it. And I think even now, I can't wait to get home tonight and get all my chores done so I can sit down and just go side quest for a while, do more, because I've done more since I rolled credits even. But I like the pacing personally of it. And I do, 2018, like we were talking about earlier, the 2018 replay we just did on PS I Love You, like I did feel there what people were talking about. I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is a little bit much right now. I want to get to the next thing, or I want what I'm doing right now to be teasing the next thing more to make me excited for what I'm doing right now. And I felt like Ragnarok did a good job of that.
Yeah, I think narratively, I was in it the whole way through, right? Like to bring a Janet quote in, right? The drama felt thick, right? Like the drama was there. Like the tea was great. Like I was in it moment to moment in terms of like all the different narrative beats that were happening and how engaging they were. There were moments, though, especially toward the latter half of the game, where I felt like the amount of stuff that they were jam-packing into this game did feel like, oh man, we're doing so much and not everything is getting as much care as the other thing. And
I can't wait for spoilers, because I want to talk about what it was that really...
Because like there are moments where I was like, this maybe could have used a little bit of editing, right? Like, did we really need to go here if we're meeting this character and we're going to be with them for, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour, right? And they're not giving the full.
Now I know what you're talking about. Now I know what you're talking about.
But there's even more than one of those.
Sure, but that's a great coded example for me to be like, oh right, okay.
But for the most part, right? Like, I don't think the pacing is like. Toward the end of it, I don't think the pacing is bad by any means. I did have points where gameplay wise, I was like, all right, man, I am 20 hours in, and I'm getting into another combat sequence, and I am for sure on autopilot. Like, I am for sure going through the motions of, all right, get my Leviathan axe, do the runic light attack, do the runic heavy attack, switch my blades, do the heavy attack, do the light. All right, hold square, Atreus, do your thing, and like, the motions of the combat did get a little bit stale toward the end of my experience. But the story for me never got boring whatsoever. Like, I was super into the story the entire time.
Janet, what about combat with you? Did that get stale or boring for you?
No, but I don't know. Like, I always love the combat of God of War, like modern God of War, and even older God of War. But to Blessing's point, yes, you are very much kind of going through like a laundry list motion where it's like, okay, well, if you use, I mean, obviously some enemies have like certain elements
Sure.
that you might want to use on them. But if not, it's like, oh, you do more damage if you like use freeze and then use fire. So I was like, okay, yeah, and it would be heavy attack, light attack, whatever Trace got going on. The chain, it did kind of fall into that, but I didn't mind that because I felt like I worked hard to like build some of that stuff up. That's like another reason I did the side stuff. I'm like, look, where I may fail because I don't want to parry and I never really block, I just kind of roll around. I'm just gonna beef myself up and I'm gonna go into this little area and open a chest and get more armor. And I love that it invites that stuff. Like the serotonin in this game is really high if you're someone that likes getting things and like leveling up, which I know sometimes like people have beef with like the RPG elements in this game in general or in this modern iteration of the franchise. But for me, I love that stuff. I feel like it's simplistic and digestible enough to not have to be at the forefront of my mind where I'm not like it's not like I'm crafting loadouts or anything. It's like this armor piece is better than the last one because the numbers go up. Cool, I'll put that on. And it's super straightforward and I feel like it invites those elements. While there's also like bigger challenges if you wanted to, and there's gear that leans into that with the, even the preview we talked about the shields, like one is good for if you're heavy into parrying, and I'm like, what's the other one?
Teddy Chinaris writes in to kindafunny.com/PSILY and says, how do you like the RPG aspects of Ragnarok? I'm very interested in how impactful and in-depth the gear can be. That was your top level, Janet. For me, like, I like the idea of getting stronger, but one of the complaints we had, or one of the few, like, I guess, negatives we had about the game on the Gamescast was how overwhelming and complicated the menus felt. Of jumping in there and seeing your character, or seeing your character like you're creating your own character. Yeah. You're not. That is not a slip up. That's just me being tired. Seeing Kratos or seeing Atreus, right, as you can page between it and like upgrade Atreus's armor, go into, upgrade his bow, go back to Kratos, upgrade armor, upgrade weapons, all the stuff you can do with the relics, the artifacts, all that jazz. I think to your point, Janet, it is simple and that's how it was, but it took me more time than I wanted to kind of wrap my head around that, because I would jump in and I've unlocked 4 more pieces of gears and there's exclamations everywhere and it's like, what's going on? Once I was like, oh well, this is the only armor set. I was using soul stuff, the only armor stuff, SOL, like the sun, that gives me both vitality and defense. Like, I'm gonna go this the entire way, and that was when I was like, okay, cool, just pour all my resources and assets into that, and then try to build around that. I was like, okay, I get that, and it was like, to your point, Janet, numbers are just going up. That's fine for me. But like RPG aspects of it, Teddy, I don't think they really exist, right? Like it is how it is before, where it's like, you have the number next to Kratos' name, and it slowly goes up and fills in as you change up your gear and do that.
Yeah, it's a game that it's not trying to be an RPG, and I do think that like some of the upgrade systems and skill trees and a lot of the menu stuff, right, and acquiring different gear, I think that stuff maybe could be done a little bit better. Like it never gets in the way, right? I think which is the thing that I think is important. You upgrade your gear, and it is pretty straightforward in terms of once you figure it out of like, all right, I just need to get the numbers up. Like that's all I need to do. If I want to upgrade this thing, I need to upgrade this thing. If I want to change to a different piece of gear, I need to change to it. And they do have like the different shields that we talked about and stuff that we talked about in the preview in terms of, hey, yeah, there's a shield that's good at parrying. There's a shield that's good, that's easier, that's less reward for the parrying. There's another shield that does this, right? You have stuff there that might change the playstyle, but for me, I never felt like that stuff impacted my gameplay that much, right? Like it's playing in this middle place of wanting you to have your build as Kratos, but also, making it so that you don't really fuck up your build. There's no way to fuck up your Kratos in this game. But that in terms of the menu stuff, right? That did leave to moments where, I'm going in, I'm looking at my different pieces of gear, I'm looking at the different runes or whatever that I have attached to my pieces of gear, and I'm going, all right, this thing does this thing does this. All right, what does my Kratos even look like now in terms of skills and attributes? And they don't really give you an easy way to analyze that stuff and really try and min-max or figure out your situation. But there are sparks of upgrades and equipable items that had me engaged, right? Like there was one that I got that made it so that what was it? Oh, it made it so that whenever I use my takedown, my R3 takedown, I then got a burst of health for a few seconds. Sure. And that then made it so that, oh shit, all right, whenever I'm low on health, I am switching to my fists, I am punching my enemies, I'm building that stagger meter up, and I am taking them down to get that burst of health. And that was very satisfying. Moments like that I thought were really good. I wish there was a bit more interesting use cases like that, right? Like I go to the Atreus special ability thing as well, right? Where if you remember from God of War 2018, if you hold square, Atreus will like send out a bunch of like animals made of light, essentially, that'll go out and attack your enemies. That is back again. I do wish there was more, I guess, variety in terms of what those actually did, because I think it might be 1-for-1 in terms of like, oh yeah, this will do this much stagger versus this much damage, but if you do switch to this one, it'll do this much damage versus this much stagger. I think they maybe could have gotten a little bit more crazy with it, right? Of like, oh yeah, if you use this one, it'll be a poison effect, or like, I don't know, some kind of electric effect or something crazy like that. I think there's a bit more room for creativity in wanting to make your build that they could have explored, that I would have wanted out of the RPG aspects of it. But as it is now, right, it's still a fun combat system. And again, they don't. God of War Ragnarok is not trying super hard to be an RPG, so it's hard to even get down to the game for that.
The one thing that I brought up in the review that I just want to shout out again of being able to, like, for the most part, stick with a gear set for the entire game, right? In 2018, it was like, oh, here's a couple pieces of gear, you can level it up. It starts at level 4, and you can level it up to 5+ or whatever. Whereas here, it's like, there's armor that you can get, and you see it's like, oh, I can level this all the way up to level cap. And granted, there are pieces later on that you'll get that start at like level 5 or something like that, but then they will go forward to level cap and stuff like that. So again, just a little thing to kind of make you feel more invested in the pieces that you're getting. Just speaking of RPG elements,
But I don't know if I loved that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fine with it, and it didn't bother me, but I have good memories of 2018 of getting a new piece and be like, oh, wow, I'm putting this on, I'm doing that. Whereas with this one, it was, well, I've invested so much in this, and it's giving me the two things I want. I'm fine.
It's the argument you and I always have between Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Valhalla. You know, it's just it's like a preference thing.
But here's what gets interesting. So Gabe PH writes in to kindafunny.com/PSILY and says, how are the outfits? And so
styling.
But here's my thing about it, right? Is
I've
that
always liked the outfits.
You're sorry, was that Janet?
I've always liked the outfits. I know some people were like, the 2018 ones, I was wearing this ugly thing because it had good stats. I don't liked all of them. I don't know. Maybe
There
I
was
have
definitely
bad taste,
ugly ass shit I wore there. But that was this is back to, being the Odyssey versus Valhalla argument, where in Valhalla and Assassin's Creed, there are just the armor sets you wear throughout the game, and you're like, okay, cool, and done. Whereas with Odyssey, I loved changing on the fly, yada yada, and they eventually added transmog. And this is something someone mentioned on the review today. There not being a transmog system. Chat popped off saying, I thought there was going to be, and then people pulled up the Eurogamer article that says yes, there will be. This is Victoria Kennedy in November 2022, which is now. I don't know why I said it like that. And says God of War blah, blah, blah. In a recent developer interview on the Discord, the lead designer said it would. When asked if there was going to be an option by one fashion conscious fan, they replied, quote, the short answer is yes, there is a way to do it, ... It's in there in the game. Did either of you see this? Because I casually glanced where I had a different sets. I went through and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I went back to my other armor and there was no hit R3 to copy. And I went back to the other one that I thought was cool and there was no button prompt on my menu screen for me to do anything with. And I was like, oh, transmog is in this game, and I bounced.
I didn't see it.
There's none to my knowledge, and I feel like if there would have been, they would have told me very directly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they have a lot of the tutorialization is as you would expect from like 2018. So like when it comes to menu tutorialization, they're big with like the pop-ups, explaining the stuff, making you do the thing. That never happened. So I don't think we just missed it. I think it's just not in there. Maybe that'll be, people in chat now are saying day one patch ? Maybe. I haven't heard about that. I know there's a day one patch for photo mode, I believe, but I don't think they've mentioned anything further for significant day one patches. Would be nice though. It's something that I want kind of in every game, just to have the option.
I'm asking PlayStation while we're live. Hold on. Blessing, take the wheel.
I mean, to the question of how are the outfits, maybe I'm on an island by myself here. I don't really care about what Kratos got going on in
You're
his
absolutely on an
closet.
island by yourself. How dare you?
Like,
how dare you?
do
You're
I
saying
really
those
care about-
cutscenes, you don't care what he has on? He could
Not
have on a
really.
napkin. You wouldn't mind?
Maybe it's the
I just
Norse
want him
fashion.
color coordinated, you know, like that's there's some like
There's not been
visual
one outfit
upgrades.
Kratos has worn where I'm like, oh man, he's styling
Okay.
today. That
I-
guy's
I-
fresh
I-
right
when
there.
he's
There's an
all
all
red, I'm
pink
like,
armor
yes.
set in this game, and the fact that it doesn't have the highest stats is like heartbreaking. Because I got this all pink armor set, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I was living for that. And eventually I did have to take it off for a set that admittedly also looks cool, but And then I have this one sadness of like, I did a lot of the side stuff. I got 2 pieces. Usually I get like it's all the same fit because, you know, usually like it all has higher stats. So I had like the waist thing, the arm thing, but the chest piece, I couldn't afford it. Like I didn't have enough of the one of the parts. And then I'm like, oh, I'm sure I'll get that at some point. Never got it. So then I had to play like the next 10 hours with like a different top than the bottoms I had on. And like, it was a little sad, not gonna lie. I was kind of bummed.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that the set I was running, I just liked the look of, period, so I didn't think much about it. But eventually, you know, there's a million, or not a million, there's a bunch of different armor sets, and I was scrolling through, I'm like, oh, that is cool. But it was like, at that point, like I said, I don't know. We've reached out to PlayStation to figure out if we're just stupid, or if it's some side quest, or if it is a day one patch thing, because who knows? It could be anything. Nobody knows, plus.
How could
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Jake wants to know, though. And he writes into Patreon. Nope, damn it. I'm still there.
KindaFunny.com says PSILY.
It says, hey, Greg. I don't know why he's just asking me. Hey, Greg, out of all the secondary characters in God of War Ragnarok, who is the best voice acting performance? After seeing glimpses of Thor, it seems as if he delivers a great performance. How was it? So answering the latter, then the former, right? Like, Thor's awesome. Thor's, I think, a great character. I really appreciate his arc. I appreciate where it goes. The performance is great. And then the best voice acting secondary performance, I don't want to pick because I feel like everybody is so good in this. Like, because secondary would be anybody outside of Kratos and Atreus, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, Jesus, like Brock Sindri, awesome. You know, Odin, awesome. Heimdall, awesome. Scott Porter, friend of the show. You know,
Freya is one that stuck out.
Freya is amazing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's who I was gonna list.
Freya was incredible.
I think she might be.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, I think she just might be my favorite performance in a sense in the whole game. I mean, I think any and all of those actors should get accolades for their work. Even some of like the really smaller side characters, like there's so much personality and life that everyone brought to their role. I like truly adored everyone's work, but I feel like Freya sticks out to me. I think just because of so often a combination of not just the performance, but the content that she's delivering, I think was some of the most emotional and impactful moments for me. Seeing like where her story takes her. Yeah, like that's the one that sticks out for me outside of the main cast for sure.
Also, I shouted Anger Boda. I liked her performance as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want
What's
to say
that?
much
What's
about
that, Janet?
it. You weren't messing
What?
with Anger Boda?
No, I do. I said yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you said it like when
The
you're
way
like,
you said
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
No, like I again, I don't want to say too much about really anything, but I loved all of these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone just like
I think Sindri's
eating it
especially
up.
awesome in this one.
Yeah.
No, really?
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
I like seeing.
not at the top of my list. I mean, great performance. Again, these are like, it's like, which A do you prefer, right? They're all phenomenal voice actors. But yeah, probably lower on like notability for me if I had to rank them.
Wow.
I don't. It's not his performance. There's an arc with Sindri that I might have a little bit of beef with.
Wow.
But I'll save that. I'll save that one.
You know, oh my God. All right.
Pablo in the chat says no love for Mimir. I want to shout out Mimir.
Of course,
Of
yeah,
course,
Mimir.
Mimir's
Hell yeah.
awesome.
You want to talk
Mimir's
about
old news. You know what I mean? I feel like
but
Mimir
here's
got his flowers.
Yeah,
It's time to move on.
Performance stuff. But here's the thing: is that he is you're a tourist in God of War 2018, and he is your guide.
He's Dexter.
Yeah, like he is your guide throughout the second half of that game. Whereas in this one, I think they do a lot more with him as a character, and then the way he picks up and isn't your guide anymore, but is just an actual character, and the way he performs that in this, I think, is really, really well done.
Yeah, I think Mimir is just more Mimir personally. Like, I agree with what you're saying in
Yeah.
terms of his role has shifted, but he's just more Mimir, where I think, yeah, like, to compare that to Freya and her in this game, I think there's more there in terms of...
I don't think Mimir gets enough opportunities to like do different levels of like emotions as often.
Sure.
He does have flavor to what he
That's
delivers,
accurate.
but I just feel like his role doesn't sing in the same way because of his character.
I like when he calls you brother.
Brother.
That is nice. There's a lot of.
I don't
anyway.
think we have much to say. We will say much about this or have much to say about it. But just so you know, your question was read. Zach wrote into KindaFunny.com/PSILY and says, could you give me some details / insight into Angry Boda? She is one of the most interesting new parts of the game for me, and I really want to hear more about her. Obviously, no spoilers, but I would love to have some details.
I love her character. That's all I'll say.
Sure. Great performance again, too.
Yeah.
Great new character. But yeah, I would leave it as that. I don't know how much has actually been put out about that character, so I would prefer not to ruin anything for anybody about what that character is.
Yeah, same.
Janet, do you want to ruin it? Do you want to ruin it for people?
No, but I appreciate the challenge of the question of how do you tell me more without telling me anything. I mean, I think she does. I think what's great about her character and really like any of the new characters that are introduced is I think oftentimes we see a lot of foils in stories like this, especially that have such like a widespread cast. I appreciate that she really is her own person. It doesn't feel like she is supposed to be opposite or adjacent to any one particular character. Obviously, you can maybe draw parallels in terms of like elements of, you know, age or background or like the context in which you encounter this character, but other than that, like she feels like she is her own person in her own right, and I loved her from the jump of meeting her, and the more I got to know, I feel like the more fascinating that she became. So yeah, I absolutely loved that character. I'm excited for people to meet her.
Switching off to a character we can talk a little bit more about then, Sam writes into kindafunny.com/PSILY, just like you can for free, and says, in previous discussions about God of War 2018, it was said that Atreus would come off as an annoying, whiny little kid. How has he evolved in this game, and is he more tolerable? Blessing Adeoye Jr.
I love him in this video game.
Me too.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters.
No choice but to stand.
Yeah, I gotta stand. I was in our God of War 2018 re-review. That was one of my big gripes. Is like I just can't stand Atreus in this game for some reason. I think it was just the fact that he was a child, and he was written like a child, and he was written like an annoying child. And a lot of his growth and evolution in that game, and his character development, just went to places where I was like, oh, why do you have to be so annoying? I understand that now. You're like, oh, I'm a kid and I'm a god. I'm gonna do kid god shit.
Yeah.
But like, it was grating to me. This Atreus in this game, teenage awkward Atreus, oh, that's my guy. Like I think I talked about it. Was it last week? There was a show where I talked about like the question was who would you go trick or treating with? It must have been PS Love You.
Yeah.
And like I was like, yo, yeah, I'm taking Atreus and Ellie from Last of Us Part 1 trick or treating, and we're gonna be a happy family. Yeah, no, I think his growth as a character. We're talking about opportunities for characters to emote, right, and do more. They gave him so much to do in this game, and I think the way they explore his character and the way they explore his relationship with Kratos was really great.
Agreed 100%, right? Yeah. I think what was shocking, I think I talked about this in the preview, but stand with me real quickly, is that when he opened his mouth and started talking, I was like, oh man, that sucks. They had to recast Atreus because obviously Sony, who played him in 2018, was a kid, and like he must have, this is an older Atreus, it probably outpaced him. And then I looked at the credits, I'm like, that is still Sony.
Yeah.
That is still Sony, and he's just grown up. And it was like, I had not a moment or whatever, but I think coming off of 2018, there was like 2 play sessions or 3 maybe where it took me before it felt natural, and I was like no longer being like, man, you sound like a completely different kid, which I know obviously happens as people grow up. It happened. Oh, I hope it happens to me one day. But in this specific instance, right, like it was like, okay, cool. And then by the time I was into it and not even thinking about it anymore, now to be so far gone in terms of hours and time with that character, like that's Atreus. That feels great. I like Atreus a lot in this game, and I like to the awkward teenage years Atreus. Like I like that he gets bagged on by people on a few times for that, and like he is just like he's still very different than his father. I think it would have been easy for them to. He's a god. He's growing up, so when he does stuff in the games, it's a mini Kratos to an extent, right? Like, but he is still very much his own character.
Yeah, and like obviously we don't want to spoil anything. I wish I could give examples because there are moments in the game where I'm like, hell yes, this is the way you do it. Where Atreus in 2018, you would have those moments of, hey, I'm a kid, and he would do kid shit, right? And for me, I think my reaction to it was like, oh man, this feels almost too much in terms of how much they're portraying his like American kid, attitude. Where in this one, he has those moments where he is like, "Oh, you are a teenager, like you are doing teenager shit." But to your point, right? There are moments where like they rag on him for it. He's like, "Bro, like stop being your awkward teenage selves. Like, come on, Atreus. Like, what are you doing?" And I fucking love it so much.
Oh, we're winding down here, of course. I want to make sure we get some of these other ones in here. I want to save that one for last. Thomas says, should I wait to play God of War on PS5? I have a PlayStation 4, so I could play it here. I know that I'm going to take the PS5 leap at some point. Is this the game for that? I would say it's hard to say because I didn't play it on PlayStation 4. So I'd be talking very generalized about like, well, I'm sure it's going to run better and look better on PlayStation 5. I would think wait if you can. I don't want it to get spoiled for you. It's a great thing to be in the moment of. I think you have longer load times and it won't look as good in terms of graphics, but it's still a hell of a game.
Even what are longer load times for a game that is like a one-shot?
That's a great point. That's a great point, I guess. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
I mean, I guess when you die and it says moment before you can press X again to come back.
That's a good point.
I did watch the Digital Foundry video that came out earlier today, and they were saying like, hey, even like the PS4 version and PS4 Pro like are looking real good, and they even the devs say that this is they think of this as a PS4 game, that they wanted to push the true boundaries of that console and stuff like that.
Then fuck what I said before, Thomas. Jump on in, get God of War on PlayStation 4.
If you're not getting a PS5 by the end of this year, like yes, get it on PS4.
I agree.
That's what I think too. Like, even outside of knowing more about the performance, like I guess look into that if it's of concern to you. Like if you really care, you can do like, watch the same content that Barrett watched and all of that. But I think it's worth it just to be in the moment of it and to also try to avoid spoilers. Like I feel like if you have the resources to get the game, to wait that long of a time is not something I would want to do. But if you're cool with it, go ahead. But that's why I would encourage you to just get it now and play it now.
I got two more I want to toss in here. Samson XP writes in to kindafunny.com/PSILY, just like you can for the spoiler cast. Remember, you got to get those in by the 14th. Samson says, I found the hub world from God of War 2018 to be a bit annoying to always come back to. It always felt anticlimactic after each story beat. Does Ragnarok have a similar mechanic, and does it fit in better? I didn't find the hub world you're talking about annoying, but I also don't remember it fondly for 2018. So I would say that this does have a similar hub world. You are returning somewhere after your missions, and I would say it fits in way better because it is more of a, all right, what just happened? Let's talk it out. What's the next thing? Okay, let's go do that. And it's like got that system to it.
Also, you don't get lost. I feel like maybe I'm just dumb, which is probably a little true regardless, but there are times where going back to, God, I forget what would the name of that place be? It's like specifically like the little war table, right? Every freaking game has it where you're like rotating the pieces. Going back in there, like sometimes I would just get so turned around walking back in there in 2018. I feel like this is a lot easier to dip in and out of.
What is it? It's Tyr's Temple, so it's it's the Bifrost place.
Oh, okay, with Brock's injury right outside. That's what we're referencing.
Like
okay.
And you could argue that's kind of like a multi-layered hub world in 2018 where it's like there's that and then like maybe like the larger surrounding area of that area, but like just going out and you got to take the little elevator, like it was a little bit of a slog. I feel like going back there, not that I disliked it, like I didn't have that complaint in 2018, but I think this one is better for that reason.
Final question is a short one, but an intense one. Justin Wood says, as a fellow God of War reviewer, way to name drop, I have to ask no spoilers, but are you happy with how it ended? A simple yes or no. Second question, do you think Ragnarok will be talked about for years to come? Janet Garcia, 1 and 2.
I guess I gotta stick to the protocol, but I'll expand if you guys end up cheating. I'm gonna say yes, that I'm happy with how it ended.
It's just that you're debating it.
I will dive in after you guys go if we want to dive in a little bit without getting into spoilers. So I'm gonna say yes. And then second question, we'll be talking about for years to come. Yes. Yeah,
for me, am I happy with how it ended? I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with how the game ended. I can't wait to be able to take the gloves off in a spoiler cast and go through. But I think the game is incredibly special, period. And then I think it ends amazingly and sets up both whatever might come next, and then also the fact of, hey, you want to roam around the world and do side quests, go for it. And do I think it'll be talked about for years to come? Yes, I do. Blessing.
Am I happy with how it ended? Yes, I am. I'm very happy with how it ended. I mean, in terms of the last act, there are critiques I have about how things come together, but in terms of how it ended, where the last stamp is, I think it ends in a phenomenal place. And then do I think it's going to be talked about for years to come? I think it's going to be talked about as like another marquee big PlayStation game, right? I think it'll be in that same conversation as God of War 2018, Last of Us, I guess Horizon and Spider-Man, if you want to put that up there. I know we joke around and talk about tiers of PlayStation developers, but I do think that this is the one where it is, all right, cool. God of War 2018 for so many people was a 10 out of 10. Let's see if they can replicate that with God of War Ragnarok, and they've done it. So now they are that top tier of PlayStation developer now, right? I think you put them up there with the Naughty Dogs of the world now.
Yeah. And I
for me,
sorry, go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, just really quick. The reason that I like had the hesitancy, plot-wise, yeah, I'm happy with how it ended. Narratively, mechanically, all of that. I'm critiquing like the last 2 minutes, like the last kind of ending line, the last frame. I was like, I just didn't do what I feel like maybe it should have or could have done. And again, I can't really talk more about that without getting into spoilers. But it just didn't have that. It didn't satisfy me in the way that I want to be satisfied. Like the very last line that is said.
Interesting.
So that's why I was like,
I got questions.
Oh yeah,
we'll talk about this later though.
there's so much to unpack, but yeah.
You didn't like when Mimir looked across the horizon and said, "Fuck these hoes." His little spaceship head flew away, and they were like, "You were an alien all along."
Because there was one
when you woke up and it was all a dream. No, okay,
there is one line toward the end of the game that I identify as the last line that I'm wondering if it is similar or different from the line that you're identifying.
And I feel like now it's already getting dicey, so I don't want to say anymore. But generally, I am
Slack
satisfied
the
with the
last
story,
line to PSI. I love you to our Slack channel.
The last line they say before credits hit, right? It was like was a line that hit me. I was like, "Yo, that was fire! What you just did right there."
Oh wow!
What? Okay, so yeah, me and Jada are talking about the same line,
and that didn't work for you.
That worked for.
I was
so
gonna
well
say
for me.
Barrett texted me.
Barrett,
I fucking love that line.
And it does if you really think about it. But it's just like the delivery, the overall, like I don't know. I feel like.
Again, we're talking in vagity, so we might want to move on. But I think know where you're coming from, Janet, and I do understand. But at the same time, yeah, that was the exact same line that I texted Greg, where I was like, "God damn, this hit!" So yeah,
I feel like they wanted it to. Again, we can't.
There are elements where
we're
that
gonna
line
have
came
so
from
much content
that I
in the
might be
future.
with you.
But
We have so much content out of this game in a million ways in one. Because to the question of. And we'll get on to ads here in a second. I know you're all waiting with bated breath for them. God of War we talked about Ragnarok we talked about for years to come. I definitely think so, and I think for a number of different reasons. But I think I'm trying to again, it's recency bias. And we're in the middle of it right now with everybody liking it. But I think it's the best PlayStation sequel in recent memory. You know what I mean?
Wow. Just straight shots at Last of Us Part 2, huh?
And Forbidden
the thing
West.
Is, Last of Us Part 2, I think there's so much. And again, we haven't let it bake as long, but I feel like there's, to me, like finishing Last of Us Part 2, even when I finished it, I absolutely adored it. Like I felt like I did have some, do not boom me in Slack. I feel like we did have some critiques of Last of Us Part 2, or like I understand a lot more where people are coming from. I've definitely read some critiques of God of War that I'm like, I can kind of see why you'd say that, but like I don't feel that way at all, and I feel like it'll
wait to be seen. But I really do think that like this will be the best received. Like and there's part of, that's because of course I'm not dogging anybody. They played it safe, right? They didn't do the Last of Us Part 2 thing of suddenly you are Ellie and you are Abby, and we're gonna make you do this, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna kill Joe. And we're like, and spoilers for Last of Us Part 2, but you're listen to the goddamn PlayStation podcast by now. Come on, right? But like, it is that idea of like that was off-putting to so many people. Whereas again, this is picking up the controller, and it might as well be 2018 in some ways in terms of like what's happening, but. We digress, and there'll be plenty more to talk about here on PS I Love You XOXO. And if you want to see us talk about stuff, hey, maybe you want to see us talk about stuff without any ads. Maybe you want to see us talk about stuff in the 38 exclusive episodes and contents that go up on the Patreons. Maybe you just want to go over there and say, hey, I want that shirt, or hey, I want that poster, or hey, I want to get my name read. You could do all that on patreon.com/kindafunny. But of course, for right now, the most important thing you could do is get the show each and every week ad-free. But guess what, Jack? You're not on patreon.com/kindafunny. So here's a word from our sponsor. Are you wasting money on subscriptions? 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Well, most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions when the actual total is closer to more than $200. That's right. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. There's this app Tim loves using that takes care of all of that for him. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. The app shows all your subscriptions in one place and then cancels for you whatever you don't still want. Tim loves it. It's great. You should use it. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't even know you were still paying for. You may even find that you've been double charged for a subscription. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Get rid of useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/kindafunny. Seriously, it could save you hundreds of dollars per year. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/kindafunny. That's rocketmoney.com/kindafunny. Go deeper into the canals of Numenor, the mines of Khazad-dûm, and more with the official The Lord of the Rings of Power podcast. Host Felicia Day and several special guests provide an inside look at the groundbreaking series and what it took to bring Middle-earth to life. Each episode of the official podcast features exclusive interviews with the series showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, including the very first full breakdown of the incredible season finale. Felicia goes behind the scenes with the cast and crew to bring you jaw-dropping stories and Easter eggs you won't want to miss. Watch The Rings of Power on Prime Video and listen to all 8 episodes of the official The Lord of the Rings of Power podcast for free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app now. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Is it checking up on your credit score? Didn't think so. At Chime, that's exactly what they do. Their members see an increase of 30 points on average, with payday up to 2 days early and fee-free overdrafts up to $200. So start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and it doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. The Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card is issued by Stride Bank NA, pursuant to the license from Visa USA Chime checking account, and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive effect on your credit score. Impact to your score may vary, and some user scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply except at MoneyPass ATMs in a 7-Eleven or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. So, again, start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes, doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/kfgames. That's chime.com/kfgames. Bless.
Craig.
What else could possibly be happening in PlayStation this week?
Not that much. I do want to ask the question, though. Is arrogant Sony making a return? I asked this question because this week PlayStation VR's release date and price have been revealed. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. PlayStation VR 2 will officially be released on February 22nd, 2023 for $549.99, and pre-orders will begin on November 15th. Alongside announcing the release date and price of PSVR 2, Sony has additionally revealed 11 new games headed to the platform, including the Dark Pictures Switchback VR. As revealed by the PlayStation blog, the full list of games also includes Crossfire Sierra Squad, The Light Brigade, Cities VR Enhanced Edition, Cosmonious High, Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue, Jurassic World Aftermath Collection, Pistol Whip VR, Zenith The Last City, After the Fall, and Tentacular. All of these games are said to have a release window of 2023, and while Sony has yet to confirm all of the games that will be a part of PSVR 2's launch lineup on February 22nd, 2023, it did confirm that it is expecting more than 20 titles to be a part of it. Now, of course, I started this with the question of, is arrogant Sony making a return? Mike Kurzer writes in to kindafunny.com/PSILY, just like you can, and says, is the PSVR 2 price another brick in the return to arrogant Sony wall? I think many of us assumed that the PSVR 2 would have a more competitive price due to being tethered and having the PS5 do the heavy lifting. Instead, it's even more expensive than the PS5 itself. I spend plenty of money I spend plenty of money on frivolous tech, and this still seems egregious to me. I'm almost expecting Sony to announce Ridge Racer and recommend getting a second job to afford the PSVR 2. The tech looks cool, but this price plus PlayStation VR 1 games not being playable makes this a pass for me. So to Mike Kurzer's question, Janet, is PSVR 2 another brick in the wall of arrogant Sony?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I think it's an upsetting price point. I don't necessarily think it comes from a place of arrogance. I think it does come from a place of I have to assume necessity for the tech that's going into this device. That being said, I think it's totally fair to not be happy with the price or to not think it's going to be viable, because I don't think that. Seeing this was really a bummer because I'm like, oh man, this is $50 higher than the most expensive PS5 SKU. And I can think of a lot of games and reasons to get a PS5, and I cannot list nearly as many reasons to get PSVR 2. And frankly, gonna call it now, I don't think there probably will be as many reasons, because that's not the kind of thing it is. You know, this is a niche item inherently, so to make it even more inaccessible in price, and I get that, like, okay, if they wanted to make the price competitive, maybe the hardware wouldn't be as good, and then maybe they wouldn't want to do it. Like, I understand how it got to this point, but as both a fan and a critic and a proponent of VR and all of those things that come with it, like, I struggle to see where people are you're really just doing it for the culture. And you kind of were already doing it for the culture anyway. VR, again, it's not probably going to be where the greatest game experiences of all time are, even though there are going to be some cool as hell things for the platform, I'm sure. But it's rough in that, like, I don't know, seeing this kind of felt like the dagger in PSVR and the future of PSVR beyond PSVR 2. Like, I just think it's going to be so tough to get people to get this thing at all. I mean, even like the only reason I would get it is just for the sake of like the show at this point, because it's so high for what it is. Yeah, it's a rough spot.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, we talked about it on Games Daily at length, right? And I think Janet summarized it really well there. And so I fall into her camp for Mike's question of, is this the return of the hubris of PlayStation, an arrogant PlayStation? I don't think so. I don't get the vibe from this that we are the fucking shit. This thing is gonna be the best thing ever. You'll get a second job, Ridge Racer, all the jokes you want to make about PS3, right? Like, I don't get that vibe. I do get the vibe of it's cutting edge VR tech. It's, super powerful. It's more powerful than the Quest 2. It's more powerful than this. There's more pixels in the eye. It's got eye tracking. It's got inside out. It's got these dope ass controllers. Da, da, da. It's got more processing power than a Quest because it's plugged into PlayStation VR or PlayStation 5. I get all of those bullet point factoids and I go, I just am with Janet that, like, I don't see it yielding a $550 experience on launch day out of the box with the library. Again, you ran through really quickly the 11 games they put there, right? And we did that on Games Daily, and it was, all right, well, this is already on Quest. This is already on Quest. This is PlayStation VR and PlayStation VR 2. And so you could already play it if you're really interested. And I think it just comes down to that thing of where the PlayStation VR 1 was this, we're trying something. It's going to be, PlayStation 1 all over again. We're building something. And I think people bought in knowing that was the experience. And they felt like they got their $400 worth out of that and those experiences. But they've had it for so many years. And how often do you use your PlayStation VR? I know there's a huge audience that uses it all the time, yada, yada, yada. There's a big audience, not a huge audience, but a vocal audience that is that people. I just think the majority aren't. And so you get to this point of, what does PlayStation consider a success with this? What are they actually expecting to move with this, and how are they actually going to support it in the future going forward? And that's what it'll really come down to. But I'm right there with Janet, where if I was on the outside and I wasn't either getting one for review or buying one via KindaFunny so we could review it and do stuff with it and make content with it, I would not buy it. And it's not me saying it's going to be garbage. It's not me saying these games look bad. It's not me saying PlayStation's a son of a bitch for doing this. I get it.
Been sold.
I understand all the algebra that got us to this price, but I look at it and I'm just like, I don't think I would be getting $550 worth of joy out of that to go at the start.
And I agree with both of you.
What was that gameplay that just popped up a second ago? Was that Tentacular?
I think that was Tentacular, which I keep reading.
Not gonna lie, I want to fucking play that.
It's
like,
the
just like
of the PSVR 2.
Okay.
We just want to be like a giant, like, squid monster thing. But again, it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Is that worth $550? And to Mike's question, I don't look at it as arrogant Sony. I look at it as, man, I think they got roped into this. Like, I think it was they were already on the path. They had made PlayStation VR 1. All right, let's announce PSVR 2. And just the scope of what the industry has changed, both in terms of producing something like this, in terms of where MetaQuest came and went, in terms of, the price of production and, like, them having to raise PS5 price in other countries. Like, shit just got expensive. And I think if PlayStation could double back to the beginning and go back in time and go, hey, don't announce PSVR 2. Let's not do this. I think they would. This doesn't feel passionate to me. This doesn't feel like a thing they want to do. Even the way they just put this on the PlayStation blog doesn't feel like hey, let's sell people on PSVR 2 because we believe in this. It feels like hey, this is a thing we have and we're already on the train, so let's sell it.
And I feel like, that works when you're talking to what PlayStation VR 1 was and the audience that was there for that and people who were wanting to be early adopters and being on that thing. And I don't think that's the excitement level we wanted out of a PlayStation VR 2. And I also think that, not that it's been a foot in the grave or anything like that, but even once they announced that it was wired, it was immediately like okay, well, it'll look cool, fine. But like today, and granted, today we did a sponsored Iron Man VR thing. We had Camouflage in here to show it off, and Ryan Payton, of course, a KindaFunny best friend from way back and doing all sorts of stuff. I digress on all that, but I'm saying that today, standing here using the MetaQuest 2, like, MetaQuest 2 is now what PlayStation VR was, where it's like, hey, this is approachable, affordable, and it is good enough in terms of the visual fidelity. But then on top of all that, it still feels like the future. It still feels like fucking magic to spin in 360 degrees, go down, come up, poke my head out of the guardian berry, be able to walk around in it, still, again, mind-boggling to me, casting to the computer in the other room, and that's what we're streaming. You know what I mean? Like, that still feels like the future, whereas PlayStation VR, a $550 price point to play the games we're seeing here right now, which don't look bad, but don't look like they're $550 good. Who knows about Horizon? But to have it tethered in there and like, I couldn't have the experience I had playing Iron Man VR 2 today, where I was spinning around and moving really quickly and doing whatever I want on PlayStation VR 2. And I know that because I couldn't have that experience when I played it on PlayStation VR. It was tethered and was like, oh, this isn't as much fun as it should be. It was more fun today to do it the way it is. And so why would I go on this high end that's a little bit better when MetaQuest 2 is good enough?
It honestly, like, really quick, because, you know, we have others to talk about, but, like, and I know people that really know the VR space. I know people that really know the VR space probably are, like, not at all surprised with this price and are maybe even a little annoyed that people are mad about the price. But it feels like, looking back and, like, looking at it with the context of the price, that PlayStation, the ethos kind of contradicts itself with this idea of having VR that's related to or associated with this console that you like, oh, you only need the console to do it, you don't need this powerful PC or whatever. Like, it feels like it's at odds with the market that it's selling to. Like, this is like, if you're trying to get VR with people that have like a PlayStation 5, that is a more casual audience than standalone VR, whether they're like the easy headsets like the Meta ones or the crazy ones that you soup up to your PC. Like, that's the kind of audience that cares about that next level of fidelity that PlayStation is offering with this headset, not the audience that is just casually on console. So it's like, okay, it's really cool that you like, this could be the best looking thing ever, but like, I'm not the kind of person, at least, you know, if I'm just a PS5 owner, I'm not the kind of person that cares about that at that level. Like, that's a different audience. So for it to be like such a high buy-in for such a casual audience, that like that audience, what have people been complaining about? The tether. What do we have? The tether. And they're like, oh, well, it's for good reason. It's like, yeah, but I don't care about those reasons.
Yeah.
I want ease of use. I want cheap.
I want good
and
enough.
I want PlayStation games, which maybe not all those things can fit together. And maybe that's what we're realizing now, but it's just kind of it's a rough spot for it to be in. And it's a bummer because I want it to work and work well. But now it feels like even if I have the best experiences ever, is that really going to move the needle or matter in the big picture? Probably not.
We shall see.
We shall see.
For now, let's talk about PlayStation Plus. Has PS Plus lost the sauce?
No!
I asked this because PS Plus has lost nearly 2 million subscribers since its revamp. This is Anthony Wood at IGN. The number of PlayStation Plus subscribers has fallen by almost 2 million since Sony launched its revamped subscription service in June. According to the company's latest financial report, Sony's multi-tiered PlayStation Plus subscription service has dropped from 47.3 million at the end of June to 45.4 million in the 3 months leading up to September 30th, a decrease of 4%. Sony highlighted that the ratio of gamers subscribed to the service is significantly higher on the PS5 than it is for the previous generation PS4 console. In response, Sony leadership plans to accelerate the adoption of PS5 hardware to, quote, recover this user engagement going forward, end quote. Janet Garcia, what does this mean for PS Plus?
I don't think it means anything quite yet. I think part of this could just be an ebb and flow situation, but I think it's also worth assessing what is the reasoning for these drop-offs. I think without getting more like customer feedback, which I don't know if they have that set up when you do drop off and like you could write and explain why, it's tough to know what is causing this. It could just be stuff expiring and not a desire to re-up. It could be confusion on the tiers, frankly. I mean, even for myself, like obviously part of the reasons that I'm constantly misnaming stuff is because I keep using that joke that's PS++, and I forget the real name. But there's been so much conversation, I think, around what is where, what can you do, what can't you do? Wait, this is streaming, but you can download, and then this one, it normally would be on the base tier, but now it's on this one, and they all have similar names. I think that stuff probably does hurt in terms of keeping customers or acquiring customers, but definitely not. I don't think it's a sign that like PS Plus is circling the drain by any means, but I think if we want to guess why this might be happening, we have things we could point to that I think that could be improved on the platform that we've talked about at length on the show.
Greg?
I think it's exactly what PlayStation probably expected when they sat down to bean counters. because again, the important thing to PlayStation here and their shareholders, which is where this information comes out of their quarterly earnings, right, is the fact that revenue off of PlayStation Plus is up. What is it, 10%? Like, that is the real headline here. The 2 million is an impressive number to toss out there and be like, oh my god, doom and gloom, whatever that means, yada yada yada. But in reality, you do these kind of shifts expecting and hoping that your hardest of hardcore will go up in price to get whatever it is you're doing, and that is exactly what happened. So I'm sure PlayStation is happy with this. I'm sure they don't like the headlines out there, 2 million lost in these conversations. But when you actually go in there and you talk about how much money they're gaining, that's what they care about.
Yeah. Outside of this, because like unrelated but unrelated, right? Talking about PS Plus in general, I will say the last or since the revamp of PS Plus, I have been left desiring, right? And I'm not even saying that like that's part of the numbers or anything, because I do think that it's what Jane is talking about in terms of, I think it's just the ebb and flow. I don't think that they didn't predict this as PlayStation. They probably saw this coming, but they still saw the numbers going up, so they probably were like, all right, cool, it's fine. But that said, I feel like PlayStation Plus has been lacking a little bit compared to what it has been in the last couple of years, right? Because we talk a lot about like the Buck Snacks of the world, the Final Fantasy VII remakes coming to PS Pluses of the world, the I was gonna say Destruction All Stars, maybe not, but like maquettes of the world.
Those Destruction All Stars of the world.
What an afternoon it
but
was.
like when I bring up Destruction All Stars, it's more so the day and date, you know, big new game of the month that's coming to PS Plus, right?
Arcadegeddon.
The Arcadegeddons of the world, right? I feel like we've been lacking a little bit. Maybe that's maybe that's just us getting further into the generation and them being less hungry with the tier of games they're putting on the service, or maybe it's just the
Are you
games
doing
haven't
this
been
by
appealing to me.
comparison with Game Pass, you think, or are you just
No,
based on what the offerings
just,
are?
I think just based on like me being more excited for PS Plus in the past. I feel like last year I was like, oh man, PS Plus month for month is fucking killing it.
I'll give you that, because even something like Maquette, right, was like, oh, I'm interested in what this game
Yeah.
is, so getting it for free is exciting. That's
Like
something
Maquette,
that,
Operation Tango, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, Operation Tango is hella fire.
Yeah, I love that game. So good.
And I feel like Fall Guys in 2020 with
Sure.
PS Plus. Like I feel like we've gotten a few less of those. Like the last one I can think of is, I guess, Stray, in terms of like a banger on PS Plus, but that was even part of PlayStation Plus Extra, not necessarily the essential.
oh, so now you're not going to
Yeah.
count that anymore. You're not even counting
I mean,
that.
I can count it, you know, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not.
It's been a
excited
while,
about
I would
it.
think, yeah, since I was like, oh man, this is coming out and it's on PlayStation Plus
Yeah.
today. That's awesome. I can't wait to jump in and do that. I'm pulling up a list off fandom here.
Do that.
Right, and it's like, yeah, looking back, so what for this month? Heavenly Bodies, Lego Harry Potter Collection, Neo 2, October, Hot Wheels Unleashed, Injustice 2, Super Hot. And you see, not bad games
Not
by
bad
any stretch
games,
of
of
imagination, but
course.
like, yeah, where's the hotness? Yeah, September, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Need for Speed Heat, Toem. And it's like, okay, cool, but yeah, Like a Dragon then for August, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Little Nightmares, Dark Pictures Anthology, Man of Medan.
Oh, okay. I take
even-
it all back.
Not
I
even-
will say Roller Drome. I think the thing that shocked me about August is that Roller Drome didn't come to PS Plus. It was part of the trial, like the free trial you get at the PlayStation Plus Premium level. Of course, the big perk that everybody's looking forward to.
That's what we were all looking forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a tier of game that I'm talking about, where I feel like on a regular or in years past, Roller Drome I feel like would have been a PS Plus game.
For sure,
And
you would think so.
That passed over at PS Plus this August, and not a big deal, right? I think it's just I've been surprised that we haven't brought up PS Plus as much as I feel like we did like toward last year and the year before.
It ebbs and flows, I feel like, but yeah, I hear you on that. I think with their big redesign, right, like they kind of don't move the spotlight away from the free monthly games, but they are trying to get you to go up to those PlayStation classics, to get you to go up to that library of free, games that are there.
One more piece for PlayStation updates here for you. The Last of Us HBO has a date that is now official.
Woo!
This comes from @NaughtyDog on Twitter, where they tweeted out, "You have no idea what Lost is. The Last of Us premieres January 15th on HBO Max." What's the hype check? Jenny, you hype?
I am hyped, even though I think you have no idea what loss is a little heavy-handed. I think, even though it's a dark show, but let's I don't know, let's dial it back a little bit. I think at some point we probably do have an idea what loss is, given that we just went through a pandemic. But yeah, January 15th,
They're not
I'll be
talking to us.
there.
It's a quote from
HBO
the
Max.
game. It's a
quote-
quote
it's
from
literally
it's
a
Joel
quote.
I
talking to
know, but,
Ellie.
like,
It's not HBO
it just
talking
doesn't.
to us.
But yeah, but like it just.
Yeah, Jana's
it-
right though. We do know what Lost is.
It's just a little bit like, I don't know. I feel like we could have done something else that hit harder than you have no idea what loss is. It's like, okay, calm down. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I mean, I love Last of Us. It's probably one of my
Pages
favorite
stick together.
franchises.
It could be that.
And yeah, I mean, like, I'm very curious to see what this adaptation looks like, you know, how it fares from like a television standpoint, I don't even know how much access I have to the casual audience that wouldn't already know the game in terms of the people that like I follow on social media and stuff. But I'm excited. I'm almost more excited to see that response. Like, how do people just take this as a television show outside of having that heavy fandom for The Last of Us? But yeah, definitely gonna watch.
I'm a big fan of the poster. I think the poster's hot.
For sure.
Very good composition
Nice.
there. Bring back hashtag PS Love photo mode because this feels like something that'll make it in there.
You want a photo mode of the show?
Yeah, bring back the photo mode.
Take your
I
best
wanna-
screenshot of the
Hashtag
show.
PS
I feel
Love
like-
being sued by HBO
I
for
feel like
putting
if we
screenshots
had-
of their show.
If we had hashtag PS Love photo mode during Last of Us Part 1 when that came out, somebody would have made something like this, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
I feel like
fair
people
enough,
out there
fair
are
enough,
creative.
fair enough. I understand.
Now it's time for PlayStation Picks. Of course, this is where we talk about the games that are coming out this week and the one thing each of us have been playing. The drop looks like this week. We got Endling Extinction is Forever for PS5, Go Song PS5, PS4, Godlike Burger for PS4, The Chant for PS5, and The Entropy Center for PS5 and PS4. Janet, what was your PlayStation pick this week?
It got kind of chaotic. Obviously, I, finished God of War, which like shout out to finishing that. I dipped into Overwatch 2 and Ghostbusters, which was just like
Whoa.
it was like a multiplayer moment. It's just on the weekend where I'm like, hey, me and Isaiah have been sick for we were sick for like 2 weeks, and then I've been really busy with reviews and stuff. And I'm like, now we're gonna hang out, we'll play. And he's like, yeah, he got really into Overwatch 2 all of a sudden, and was like, oh, let's all play, like all of us in the house except for my dad because he doesn't play games. And I played for like an hour, and I had an awful time because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I know Andy kept tweeting at me what to do, but I just really need to be taught how to actually play that game and how to even get better at it outside of like aim better and like do better at the objective. Like, I just haven't figured out how to wrap my head around what I should be doing to improve and move things forward and enjoy it. So I'll revisit that with Isaiah's help. I'm like, I really need a lot of help because I
feel like
don't
you should play
know
with friends.
what's going. I did, but like only Isaiah know how to play. So it's like, okay, it's me, Isaiah, Edwin, and Maggie. Like none of us know how to play. Only Isaiah knows. And he's like, you'll figure it out. Just try different characters. And I'm like, I need a more hands-on walkthrough. And then I did Ghostbusters right after that, which funny enough, I had some fun with it. I'm not gonna lie. Obviously,
That keeps being the reaction
disclaimer,
to
I know
Ghostbusters
Greg.
from everybody, where everybody's like,
He's
actually, this is fun.
Listen, we thought Greg was just shoving it down our throats like he does everything else he likes, but this game's actually not bad.
Yeah, like I'm too early to like give a more critical take on like my assessment of it as, how good of a game is it and the missions and whatever. But look, I made my character, I put a pumpkin on my head, and I worked on catching the ghosts, and the ghosts were harder to catch than I thought. And I played only a level or two with Isaiah. But we're probably gonna keep playing because I already know Greg's role in the game, and Isaiah knows that Greg is in the game, but he doesn't know who he is. So he's like, I want us to play, and I want to try to see if I can know who Greg is, basically.
It's
so
gonna
we're
be
gonna
really difficult. He does a really weird voice in it for sure.
We're gonna go through that for those vibes, but also just looking for let me know in the comments what y'all's history is with this. Obviously, I have a lot of good experiences playing multiplayer games with Isaiah, like Operation Tango and all that. But every now and then, it's just so rough when you're trying to mesh with another player who has different background tastes, all of that. And I don't know if either of these two is gonna take us to where we need to go, but I'm gonna spend probably more time with Overwatch 2 and Ghostbusters, so we'll see.
Greg, did you pick anything to play this week?
I'll get that in a second, but I have breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. PlayStation has answered the call. We asked, hey, Transmog is apparently in the game, according to Eurogamer. Where the hell is that? Why don't I find it? Their answer is it unlocks for the armor at level 9.
Oh my god!
Why do that? Why?
Tomato, I'm throwing
You
tomatoes.
reached the top of the fucking mountain. You played this
Why?
game for 80 hours. Now you can look how you want before you turn it off.
Why?
That's rough.
Would I want to do this?
That's that's antithetical to the idea of transmog.
That's
No,
gonna
that's so
that's gotta
bad.
get patched out. And once people
Honestly,
find out, that's a bad move.
I am more offended that they did that than not had it on. That feels like very monkey's paw of them. They're like, we heard you
Oh,
wanted
you want
this.
transmog? Sure, here you
So
go.
let me give it to you in the least interesting way possible. That's rough to hear. I'm
That's
not gonna
rough, buddy.
lie. It's difficult to
I feel like we
sit with
gotta
that
amend our
news.
review scores. I think it's a 4 to 5 now.
Yeah, what I want my
3?
pink
Should I go
armor. I
down?
want to put my pink armor on again without losing stats because I need them because I'm not that good at the game.
I don't like that one bit. In terms of what I played this week, it's only been God of War for PlayStation. That's all I've had time to do. I'm still playing a ton of Marvel Snap in between things, and I beg the Marvel Snap people to eventually bring that to PlayStation in our segment we call PSP. Please send it to PlayStation, whatever the fuck we call it.
Port software to
Nailed it.
PlayStation.
Port software to PlayStation. I would love to see that. Bring it on over, put it there, because that's a really fun game that I would like to see cross progression over on PlayStation. And then again, it was sponsored, so you can take it with a grain of salt if you want, but we did the Iron Man VR stuff. And again, as somebody who liked Iron Man VR on PlayStation VR but was turned off by the load times, I was super impressed with those today.
Hell yeah.
And the 360 cordless movement.
For me, I played the Entropy Center, which is a game that I brought up recently on KindaFunny Gamescast, talking about games that are coming out this month. Reading from this is part of the drop that I read earlier too. Reading from the store page, right? Think in reverse, outsmart the impossible, a mind-bending first-person adventure where you solve ingenious and complex puzzles by rewinding objects through time. This game is basically Portal, right? It is. These guys.
Is it as good as this? Because this looks good.
It looks good.
It's honestly
It's a really
good.
you've shown us this before, and I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
this does look good.
Once you get into it, you can feel the budget a little bit, right? I don't think it's it's not this like. Actually, no, it looks like this. It looks pretty much like this, right? It's not super duper polished, and like there's not like a lot of crazy shit happening, but it gets the job done so well, and I think the presentation of it is pretty good, right? Like it is wearing its Portal influence on its sleeve. You literally wake up in a room that looks like it's the same room from Portal,
Yeah.
the one that you wake up in. And you are doing what are essentially test chambers. They just give them a different name. Like the entire vibe is similar to Portal, but it is you're in a facility that is like dilapidated and crumbling down, and the thing that this game does to kind of separate itself a little bit is that like, okay, no, obviously shit is wrong, and it is seemingly post-apocalyptic, and as you're walking through, you have this gun that has like a smiley face on it and a personality, and it talks to you and shit.
Sure.
But there was a moment for me early on in the game where I'm like, I'm standing on this I don't know what I call it. It's like an elevator, but it moves sideways, it goes up and down. I'm on this train. Let's call
People
it a tram.
mover or people mover?
I'm on this people mover. I'll call it
Okay.
a tram. I'm on a tram and it's moving, and like structures are falling down because this place is so fucked, right? It's like the architecture is crumbling, and there's a moment where it is okay. These things are about to fall on top of you, so one after another, you have to use your your rewind gun to like aim it and then like reverse the falling so that it doesn't crumble on top of you. Stuff like that I think is pretty cool and does help distinguish it a bit from Portal. And the puzzles so far are smarter than I was expecting. I was like, how are you gonna make a rewind gun feel like a really good puzzle mechanic? The puzzles have felt clever. It has been the thing of, all right, you have boxes that are basically the boxes in Portal, right? That you are picking up and putting on pads and using those to unlock doors to try and get to the next area. And it is the puzzle of, all right, how do I put this here? But then like there's another pad that opens up another door, so I need to go here, put this thing here, and then rewind it to the other pad so I can go through the doors in a specific order. Those are the kind of puzzles that you're solving, and I'm very early on. I'm a few chapters in. I want to say I'm on chapter 3 or 4. I'm probably like an hour and a half into gameplay, and I'm very much excited to go back to it. I think so far it's scratching that Portal itch that I've had for over a decade since Valve refuses to make another Portal game.
Sure, fair enough.
And yeah, it's just really fun. It has a good energy to it. There's a lot of dialogue too. Your character is voiced, and so there is a back and forth between the character you're playing as and the gun.
How
you're
long
holding.
do you think it is? I know it's
Judging
hard.
from the trophy, well, I looked at the trophies, and I'm on Act 3, and I think there was like 15 acts or something like that.
Okay.
And so like if I did the math, it seemed like 7.5 hours ish.
Okay.
If each act, let's say, is 30 minutes long, which is a bit longer than I want, honestly, but I don't know, like I'll see how far I get to it. Right now, I don't know if I'm going to finish it, but I'm going to play more right now. Like I have enjoyed my time with it so far. So if you're looking for a first-person puzzle game, the Entropy Center is out this week.
Well, excellent, Blessing. It's good to know. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of PS I Love You XOXO. Remember, each and every Friday we come to you with all the PlayStation goodness you need to know about. Of course, you can get it early over on patreon.com/kindafunny. You could be watching us record the show live, just like Old Man Rivers, Ryan Povala Higgins, and Matt Grover are. Of course, on patreon.com/kindafunny, you could be a producer. You could get the 38 episodes a month of exclusive bonus content we put up. You could get posters, you could get things, you could get shirts, you could have a great time, but more importantly for us, you could just say, hey, you're doing a great job, here's some support. We love and appreciate it. But if you got no bucks tossed our way, it's no big deal. youtube.com/kindafunnygames, podcast services around the globe each and every Friday. Remember, the big takeaway from this, of course, is that we are doing God of War Ragnarok spoiler cast, recording on the 14th with Eric from Sony Santa Monica, the game's director, and then publishing that on November 21st. So you have to play through the game, get your questions in, all the spoilery thoughts and theories you had, and we'll bounce them off Eric and go from there. For now, though, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.